Welcome to the Actually You Can podcast. I'm Miff Galloway, a performance coach passionate about supporting ambitious and high-performing women just like you who know they have untapped potential just waiting to be unleashed. If you're looking to massively up-level your performance in all areas of life, you've come to the right place. My goal on this podcast is to take you beneath the surface so you can connect with yourself on a deeper level while providing you with valuable insights and the tools necessary to navigate life's challenges and go after your goals with strength, clarity, and wisdom. If you're ready to uncover the truth which lies underneath so you can recognize your powerful feminine leadership style, pursue your goals unapologetically, and thrive in every aspect of your life, hit the follow button and get ready to explore the incredible possibilities that lie within you. Together, we'll uncover your next steps in achieving peak performance, because actually, you can. Welcome back to another episode of the Actually You Can podcast. I'm your host, Miff, and today I have the pleasure of sitting down with Sharon Ehrlich, who is an executive coach, podcast host, and former IT exec with over 30 years of leadership experience at global companies like IBM and Citrix. She was born and raised in the Bronx, New York. Sharon was the first in her family to overcome socioeconomic barriers. Now based in Vienna, Austria, she leverages her unique cultural perspective and resilience to empower high-achieving women to lead boldly and authentically. Sharon combines professional expertise with personal passion and believes women have more control than they realize, partnering with them to embrace their power and create meaningful impact in their careers and lives. So welcome to the show, Sharon. I'm so stoked to be able to talk to you today.
Miff, I'm so happy to be here. You're already starting the show with so much energy, so I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Well, it's because this topic is super close to my heart at the moment. We were just talking about this offline, but we're going to be diving into specifically work-life integration and how we can thrive professionally without feeling like we're sacrificing ourselves. And so I just want to jump straight in. I mean, you mentioned work-life integration, and I know the term work-life balance gets thrown around as well. And I'm assuming that you've chosen the word integration deliberately. Tell me more about
Yeah. I have a real challenge with the concept of work-life balance, because normally what that means is that you're pitting your work against your life. And actually, it's all your life, isn't it? And so what I like, when I talk to my clients, what I talk about is, listen, you wake up in the morning, up until the time you go to bed, that's your life. And so we have to find a way, balance that in some ways so that you don't feel wrung out every single day. Right. Let's make no mistake. There will be days that you do feel wrung out. So I never promise anybody in life where you're never going to feel that. But to have a little bit more control about how you're going through your days and managing your life so that you can have some joy, because at the end, we have to be happy. We have to enjoy the things that we're doing.
And so I agree. I think the term balance means that we're trying to get everything in equal balance, and our lives, we're always in motion. So even if it does get to that like sweet spot where it is in balance, it doesn't last very long. So I'd love to hear, how do you sort of educate around work-life integration versus work-life balance?
Well, one of the most important things to do, Miss, is what I call an inventory of how one is spending their time. What I have discovered, and as you mentioned in the opening, I work with high-performing women. These are women who have careers, anywhere from mid-career all the way up to director level. Some of them have children, some of them have adult children, some of them are caring for parents. So, it's a whole continuum of the kind of women I'm working with. And one of the things that I've discovered with many of them is that not only are they driven by perfection, but they want to make people happy. And this desire to make people happy has them saying yes to lots of things, even things they shouldn't be saying yes to. And so the exercise of doing an inventory of how you're spending your time over a period of 2 weeks really starts to illustrate to them, I didn't realize I was dedicating so much time to this one or to that one or to the other one. And here's the thing. There are aspects of our lives where we dedicate a lot of time to because those things were important to us once upon a time, but they're not important to us today. And so when we do this inventory, then the next exercise is, what are the actions that can go? What can you get rid of? What can you offload? If you have the resources, what can you pay people to do? Um, those things that don't add any value, let's try to reduce them or offload them. And then you gain time, right? And just with this exercise alone, this is creating a little bit more breathing room, a little bit more space to engage in the activities you want to engage in. And it's very practical. It's not something that you need tools to do. You can sit down, with a cup of coffee and say, okay, how did I spend my time today? Right. And you can do that every day. And the other thing that I encourage, my coaching clients to do is, use your smartphone. We don't have to make a big deal. Don't have pen and paper. Just put on your recorder and just say what you have to say. Or if you're a person who needs to write, all of the smartphones are equipped with a notes function. Then just take down some bullet points. Let's not overcomplicate things.
I love that as a first step. I mean, my background is also in fitness. And so one of the things that I've done with clients before is go, "Hey, I want you to log everything you eat for the next 2 days." And just that step of bringing awareness to how you're actually spending your time versus what you might think you're doing. So what you think you're eating, like, I only ate X, and then you conveniently forgot that you grabbed an extra handful of chips at morning tea, or you've had a spoon of peanut butter or something, because all those little things add up. And I was thinking about it now, I'm assuming that's the same in your life. Like, oh no, I actually only spent this amount of time with my friends. And it's like, no, actually you spent an extra 2 hours than you thought you did at work today. So I think even just the 2 weeks sounds like a really great period to start looking at the trends too, because you're right. There's some days that are just abnormal, and I don't think it's fair that we base everything off that. But I really like the idea of getting brutally honest with actually how you're spending your time through a
Right.
diary.
Right, right. And the other thing is, myth is that, Rome wasn't built in a day. And so it's not the goal to sort of rip up your whole life, all of a sudden disappoint all of the people who you committed to doing things for and, heading on your way. So there is a way to manage it so that you don't let people down, because actually this is a very big theme in many of my clients' life. They say, listen, I committed to that. I've been doing that for years. I don't want to disappoint people. And so it's like, okay, so what's the narrative around this? How are you going to manage this? And I always say, think of things from this place of generosity, because you've already learned everything you could possibly learn about that one thing, right? Um, how about handing it off to somebody else who can benefit from it? So you're not leaving the person who's expecting something from you in a lurch where they now have a gap. You've identified someone who might be able to fill in the gaps. And even if it's not your responsibility to identify that person, you could at least tell the person that you're sort of letting down to say, listen, this would be a great opportunity for someone with this profile. Do you have anyone in your life who can step in and do it? Because you also have to get people to also think and help you solve the problem. Because again, part of the problem we have is that we're trying to solve all the problems, right? And we shouldn't be doing that.
And I was hoping to talk about boundaries. You brought it up straight away, so this is great.
Yeah.
And I think what I've noticed with some either relationships or tasks that you're doing, if it's not working for you, chances are it might also not be working to the other person, right? So if you're not feeling good about particular interaction or some piece of work, if you think maybe you're spending time on a piece of work that isn't really important, you
Mhm.
check in with the stakeholders and you're like, is this actually the value that you want? And they might be like, we can probably revise this. We don't need all this detail or something like
Exactly.
that. So I think it's also, to your point, checking with the other person, but also going, is this still valuable? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But you have to use your words. I mean, this is something that we tell our children when they're small and they're crying. And we say, don't cry, use your words. We also have to use our words, right? There's nothing wrong with saying to someone, hey, I'm at a stage now where, I just don't have enough time. My life has changed. Things have to change. I want to release this. Can we talk about how that can happen? And you'd be surprised what kind of co-creative process can come up when you start to share with people. But I can tell you from my own life experience, I was not doing that. There was a time in my life where I was just saying yes to everything, suffering. I mean, just really in a very, very bad space. And took me, pardon, it took me, being in Thailand on vacation, supposed to be having a good time, and crying and crying and crying. And my husband saying, "What?" Like, I just spent thousands of euros for this vacation. What is wrong with you? And then finally, I just let it all out. And it was awful for him. It was awful for me. And of course, he immediately went into problem solving mode. And I said, listen, I don't need you to solve my problem for me. But now you understand what the challenge is. And you know what? He didn't know. He honestly didn't know because I was always so stoic. I always put on such a brave face. I always said, everything is okay. When people said, do you need help? No, no, I can do it. I can do it. Because I always sort of envisioned that this was a sign of weakness, that I couldn't manage these things. And I try to explain to my clients, and when I work with mentoring women, to say, you don't have to put on a brave face. You don't have to do everything by yourself. And guess what? People want you to be successful so you can share without sounding like you're whinging and complaining all the time. And you'd be surprised that sometimes people help you have breakthrough thinking. I mean, people hire me to help them have breakthrough thinking. But I mean, your friends, your family, they can also help you have some breakthrough thinking to help you work through some of those challenges.
Why do you think it is so hard for some women to set boundaries? Because even in what you shared, I'm like, oh, I feel that in my soul. It's like, no, I'm fine. I don't need any help. And meanwhile, you're
Yeah.
drowning, and pretty
Yeah.
much everyone can see it. They're like, just take the help. Like, you're suffering. You're like, no, no, I'm good. I'm good. Why do
Yeah.
you think it is so hard for some women to be like, hang on, this isn't working for me?
Well, think about how we're raised. I mean, I'm going to go back to all of the societal stereotypes at least in Western societies, how girls are raised. Girls are raised to be good, to be agreeable, to be silent, to be small, to take care of everyone. Even from the youngest age, we are told that we have to take care of our younger siblings, the pets at home, even our fathers, when your
Yeah.
daddy comes home running, bring him a glass of water. So this is the mindset that we're raised in. And then this is embedded in us over the course of the decades of our lives. Of course, there's no wonder women think that they have to say yes to everything and they're responsible for caring for the world. But you know what? We have to teach people how to treat us, right? And if we don't do that, they just keep piling it on because they don't know that we're overwhelmed. They don't understand that we don't have the bandwidth, that we're only sleeping 3 hours a night. And that's when I say we have control. Those are the things that we can control, that we can use our words to tell people this doesn't work for me anymore. Something needs to change.
Yeah, and I've never heard someone articulate it so simply and directly like that before. Like, no wonder we have such a hard time saying no to things. Like, it's pretty much all we've been hearing since we've been little. And so, for some people who might think it's the normal and that's just how it is, what are some maybe red flags that you could do with putting some boundaries in place and having those conversations? You mentioned sleeping 3 hours a night is probably one of them. What other ones do you see with your
But
clients?
still, absolutely no downtime at all. If you're a day, every day has 24 hours. If you cannot find 15 minutes in a day to sit down or take a walk or do anything for yourself or nothing for yourself,
Yeah,
for me, that's a red flag.
yeah,
The other red flag is if you feel like you want to move, that you want to exercise, that you want to take a walk, but you can't carve that time out during your day. That's a red flag that maybe you should be rethinking how you're doing your meetings. We can combine things, right?
yeah,
So not every meeting has to be a video call. I mean, when we all experience the pandemic, we all got used to putting these cameras on all the time. I can talk to you without a camera, miss. I can talk to you when I'm taking a walk in my neighborhood. So guess what? I killed two birds with one stone. You and I have our meeting, right? I've told you in advance, I'm doing this as a walking meeting today. Maybe you want to do it too, right? So I try to bring you along. So you set some expectations. The person knows they're going to hear some traffic or whatever. And then I get my 10,000 steps in today, right? So we have to rethink how we are behaving. So that's another red flag is if you're not moving enough. And of course, you as a fitness person have probably preached this all the time. That is a tremendous red flag. The other thing is for those of my clients who have children, if you feel like you're not spending enough time with your kids because you are spending your time doing everything else, major red flag. Because what happens is they start to feel guilt. They feel guilt. And then this guilt turns into, self-loathing. And then the thing that you're spending the time on, not your children, you start to hate that thing and you start to resent that. Then you come home and you see that your kids have spent all of their time with their grandparents or their nannies or whatever. Then you get upset with that. Then you see that your husband or your partner is enjoying the children and you're like, you get resentful with that person because how do they have time and I don't have time? So that is a major red flag. And the list is long, Miss, because, everybody's life is a little bit different. But those are just a few of those things that you have to pay attention to. And when you recognize them, it's not to go into blame mode and to say, I'm doing everything wrong. You're not doing everything wrong. It's just that you probably need to make some adjustments because you're probably doing things the way you were doing them before your life changed. And you can't continue to do them in that way now with the new life that you have or the new life that you want, right? It depends on where you're at, right?
Yeah, I like how you mentioned that too, because sometimes change, yes, it involves putting a swing ball through your life and completely revamping it. But a lot of the time, it's just making a small tweak.
Yeah.
And still, for a lot of people, that can feel really scary. Like I know for a lot of listeners on the show, it's like you're spinning so many plates. I can't possibly slow down for that 15 minutes because one's going to fall off and everything's going to come crashing down. And so I think from my experience, that's something that prevents a lot of women from making a change, even though they know they need to. It's sort of like, yes, I know I've got these red flags, but if I slow down even for a second, my world is going to fall apart. What would you say to those women?
Yeah. Incremental change is everything. Don't have to rip and replace. You don't have to break everything and start from zero. Make one small change, and then enjoy it, experience it, see how that works. Because what happens is you start to retrain yourself and retrain your brain about what is possible. And I think this is the most important thing. And it was probably the same with you when you were working with your clients. People need to see what's possible. And when they understand what's possible, that gives them the courage to make more change. But you have to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere. So you have to put a stake in the ground and say, this is the one thing that I think I have to work on. And this is how I'm going to do it. And don't make it so ambitious. Small steps, and each incremental step will build into something bigger and get you to where you want to be. And incremental steps, they're not painful for you and they're not painful for the others.
And I love that you mentioned incremental steps. And the thing that comes to mind when you say that is goal setting. And I think, especially for this type of woman, it's like, okay, I've got the big, ambitious goals that I want to achieve as well. And I think we're conditioned to have something big to strive for and always be striving. And I know for me personally, having my daughter 7 months ago, I could set a smart goal with a timeline, but that's realistically not something that feels good to stick to anymore because I have so many variables in my life. And so
Right.
I'm curious to understand with your clients how you go about supporting them to with goal setting and work life integration. I mean, I know personally for me, my goal settings aren't smart goals. It's I'm following a particular feeling. And this is the outcome that I think I'll get from it, but it's more chasing a feeling rather than a smart goal. How do you work with your clients
Yeah.
and goals?
Yeah, I think you're heading in the right direction here because I think smart goals can be very rigid if you're trying to work in that sort of framework. And that's usually setting one up for failure because just the inflexibility of it, of having that kind of framework, when you have one day that is completely atypical and you cannot work through the framework, you feel like you failed, right?
Yeah.
And so when I think of goals and when I talk with my clients, they talk about how would you like this week to look, right? Let's
Yeah.
not talk about the days, right? Because the day, you can't control every aspect of the day. But on Sunday or whenever your day is when you can slow down a little bit, when you reflect on the week, what would you like to have been, right? And let's work it back that way, because then you know you have the flexibility. Instead of saying, I have to do this on Tuesday, you know, actually, you have 6 days to achieve that, right? To satisfy yourself, to reach those goals that you've set for yourself. And so I think it doesn't need to be overly complicated. I think daily goals are very, very challenging for people who have extremely dynamic lives. And maybe in some cases, weekly goals are too much. Maybe for some folks, it's just looking back at the month or the quarter, and that's really depending on someone, right? So, for example, I coach a lot of women who are executives who travel. So their whole life is measured on the quarter because they work for sales organizations. They get measured by their quarterly performance. And so that's the way that they think. So for that kind of woman with that sort of life, having a quarterly goal works for her because that's the sort of framework that she's accustomed to. Someone like you with a little one at home, who you don't know, is that kid going to sleep through the night? You don't know if you're going to be a zombie the next day or if you're going to be well rested. Setting a daily goal would be really counterproductive for you. You'll start to feel like you're failing, right? And so better to have, like goals with very soft edges,
Oh,
very, very soft edges.
and I think that in itself goes against the narrative for a lot of ambitious people. It's like you have goals, and if you don't if you don't say what you're going to do on a particular day, you lack discipline. You can always find time. Everyone has the same 24 hours. And I'm going to call myself out. Like 8 months ago, that was me. Like you have time, you can do all the things. And yes, I probably could do a bit more what I'm doing. But I think to your point, it's how do you want to spend your time? And then
Right.
giving yourself permission to actually follow that, because it could be really easy for me to go back into my old patterns and go, no, no, this is how I need to live my life. But I was able to take the pause and go, actually, no, it's an opportunity to rethink how I spend my time and where do I actually want to spend my time. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, we're being raised in a society as well where things do feel a lot really structured and rigid. So here's your latest productivity hacks. You can't calendar block your time, and that can be really useful tools for a lot of people. But a lot of the women I speak with live very dynamic lives. It just doesn't work for them. And then to your point, they feel like failures. They go, I can't stick to my goals. I can't do X, Y, Z. And they feel like a failure because of that. And so it's really cool to hear you mention that you have found different workarounds as well, as opposed to just using smart goals and those really rigid tools.
Yeah. And the other thing is that, when you're on social media and you're scrolling through, depending on what you like and what you focus on, and then of course the algorithm starts
Yeah,
to
good point.
feed you more of that. Some of this stuff is really dangerous. You know, there was one TV star, I won't mention her name, who is highly organized. If you go into her kitchen cupboards, everything is organized by color. And I just thought, is that what women are aspiring to do in kitchens? Because if they are, they will only ever be in their kitchen organizing their cabinets. And let's put things into perspective. That person who is showing this to you has a team. They have a staff. They're not doing that by themselves. And sometimes we get a little bit distracted by these what things we should be doing so that we can have more organized homes and look better and all of this. And most of them are just completely divorced from reality, not the reality of a working person who is balancing childcare or elder care and trying to stay married, and pay a little bit of attention to their spouse or their partner. You know what I mean? You cannot compare yourself to those people.
Yeah, and 100%. As soon as you mentioned social media, I was like, oh, don't even get me started on that. I think, yeah, it's really easy because I think also when you are drained and you are feeling overwhelmed, people do go to mindless scrolling. And I'm definitely someone who has caught myself doing that. And then you just feel worse because you see people
Yeah.
who've apparently got all their shit together and they're thriving in all areas when you actually don't see the behind the scenes. So thank you for calling that out.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of something as well, is the kitchen example. I wonder, in your experience, how much does the inability to have a really healthy or fulfilling work-life integration, how much is that impacted by someone's perceived need to control everything? Because I definitely feel like sometimes when you feel a bit overwhelmed. It's like, no, I have to control everything because I know what's going to happen when. And if I don't do it, then I don't know what's going to get done properly and that sort of element. Do you
That
experience?
plays a big part.
Yeah.
It plays a
Yeah.
big part. I would say control/perfection, right?
Okay.
And I say it time and time again, perfection is a losing game. It's a losing game because first off, it's impossible to achieve consistently. You can do it once or twice, but if you're doing it consistently, then you get to how we started this conversation, that you are, you have 3,000 plates up in the air at the same time because you have to manage everything yourself. Sometimes good enough is good enough. You know, if and I can give you a myriad of examples. And a friend of mine, here's an example that's just unbelievable. Friend of mine, very successful financial advisor. Her partner is equally successful. And she was lamenting, oh my God, I'm so stressed because I have to iron his shirts. And I'm like, what? Because she said, he comes from his business trips with 10 dirty shirts and have to wash them, have to iron them and make sure that they're perfect for his next travel. And I just said, and is there a reason why you're doing that? Because I was trying to understand how she would add value to that particular task. And so what I'm driving at here is this drive for controlling everything and having everything be perfect. You have to counter that by saying, how much value am I adding? Is that the best use of my time, given everything else that I want to do? In her case, she started to send the shirts out for service because actually they could afford it. You know what I mean? And she gained hours of time. And I just thought, for me, that was such a no brainer, but she couldn't see it because she was so close to it. And she wants him to look good and she wants to support him. She wants to be that partner. And she thought that that was something that she had to deliver. And I said, yeah, you're delivering it, but you're delivering it in a different way. You're still managing it, right? But you're doing it in a different way. He's satisfied, you're satisfied. And guess what? You gain 3 hours of your time, right? That you can do for anything or for nothing, right? And so this perfection story, we have to release it. Our children don't always have to be perfectly dressed. Does it matter that if you drag them out of the house and they have some chocolate stains on their shirt? So obsessing about these sorts of things are crazy. I know it from my own experience. I have done presentations where I said it has to be perfect. And I have rehearsed that presentation to 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And then guess what? I stand in front of, people and I have circles under my eyes and I look like a zombie. Does that help anybody? No. Did anybody notice that I missed that one paragraph I wanted to say? No. Right. Only, and I think we put so much pressure on ourselves to control everything and to manage this perfection, and releasing it is tough. I'm not going to minimize that. It's really, really tough. So you have to pick the low hanging fruit. What are the things that where you realize, where it's not, nobody has to twist your arm to get you to understand that doesn't need to be perfect or I don't need to do it. And then start there. And again, as I said before, when you start there, then you start to have an awakening and realize, oh, I didn't realize I could do that. Let me do something else that doesn't need to be so perfect. Let me just deliver that good enough because people are satisfied with that particular thing being good enough. Now, am I suggesting that people deliver shoddy work if they work in an organization? No, not at all. If I have to deliver something to my tax accountant, believe me, I'm sending all of my documents in order. They are perfect. That's important, right? But not everything needs to have that level of perfection.
It's so true. And that's a really hard concept to get your head around too. Like I like the example, like I hope if I ever need surgery, that the surgeon does my surgery to perfection. They need to do that perfectly.
Yes.
But chances are a lot of the things I do day to day, like make my bed. Does that need to be perfect? No one's going to die if it's not perfect.
Right.
I just need to know that looks kind of neat because that helps me get my head in order for the day, but it doesn't need to be perfect. I think to your point, it's picking one small thing where no one's going to die. No bad consequences going to happen. Like show yourself that things don't need to be perfect all the time. And I think I think with women as well is we have maybe the thought that we need to do it all. So as you mentioned the example with the washing, mine was prepping baby food. I'm like, oh, I need to do all the fresh organic prepping at home. And I was like, oh my God, this is taking me hours. I don't have hours. And if I did have hours, I don't want to spend it on the stove. And
Yeah.
so I got support with it. And I was like, this is great. But I, you're not a failure by not doing it all. I think that's the other thing too, is I know that's true for me, is we have such incredible opportunities now as women in this world. And so we get to do anything we want to do, really. And doesn't mean that we have to do it all, or it's expected that we do it all.
Right. And the other thing is, show yourself grace. We are kind to everybody, but we're so unkind to ourselves. Kind of show yourself grace. It's okay if you didn't manage to pick all of those things off of your list. I'm a list maker, so I know about lists, It's okay. Show yourself some grace and say, all right, tomorrow's another day. It will get done, right? Be kind to yourself. And the other thing is recognize your small wins. Every day you have a win. Every day you probably have a handful of wins, especially with the little one at home. And we all have them. And we tend to focus on the misses, what we didn't do, right? But if you focus on the wins, this empowers you to say, but you know what? I actually was productive today. I did get some things done. I did satisfy some clients. I did manage to do this for my child, and they were so happy and pleased to spend a half hour with me playing or whatever it is. And if anything, if I could say some parting words, that would be the parting words. Show yourself grace and recognize your small wins, because you're winning more than you think you are.
That's like a mic drop moment there. I love that. Thank you for that. I want to, before I let you go though, I do want to hear your personal experience about navigating work-life integration. How do you make sure that it is integration for you? You're not trying to balance all of it.
Yeah. Well, in my case, there are some non-negotiables that are really important to me. I'm a lot older than you are, and so I'm really conscious of the fact that if I don't take care of my body, that's going to have a real negative impact in the next 10, 15 years. So my non-negotiables are, I have to do Pilates 2 times a week. There's 7 days in the week, so just pick 2 days. That has to happen for me. It has to happen that at least 5 days a week, I'm doing my 10,000 steps. Those things has to happen. And so, and then of course, I'm a small business owner. And like I said before, I'm a list maker. And so my goals are that I at least have to accomplish one thing that is getting me closer to a client or closing a deal. And then I have to do one thing that is helping me market my business, whether that's making a post on LinkedIn or Instagram. You see what I'm driving at here? Not boiling the ocean, right? So it's 2 things. If I get those 2 things done, plus my 10,000 steps, I'm golden. Anything else that happens after that, that's bonus. That's like, wow, Sharon was really super productive today. I'm showing myself grace. Now, myth, there are days when I am grinding 15 hours because there's a proposal, but it's very specific. Is that my life every single day? No, it's not. I have to have boundaries. The other thing that's really important for me is I have an adult son who lives near me, who likes to have dinner with me and my husband a couple of times a week. So I like to cook and have a family meal, because that's when we talk, we share information, we have a couple of laughs together. And last night was one of those nights, and it was beautiful. My mother is here, so it was the 4 of us. For me, if I managed to accomplish that, and my son was so pleased with the meal, and so was my husband, it made me happy. It really did. And I had a client call, so that was a win. I posted something on one of the platforms. That was a win. And then my family was happy. So that was a win.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about closing a big deal or anything like that. And so that's how I'm managing it. I have learned over time to show myself grace. I have learned over time I don't have to do everything. I set goals for myself because that's important for me, as I mentioned before. But like I said, they are not rigid. I give myself 7 days to get something done, and I will get it done in the 7 days.
And thank you for sharing that, because I think that's a really great example of, you can still have goals and ambitions, and you can really work them in a way that feels fulfilling along the way. Like I used to think, oh yeah, I'll be fulfilled when I achieved the goal. And I was like, "Ugh, this whole journey to get there, that's just part of it. You don't need to be there the time." And if I look back on some of the things that I've achieved, I'm like, man, I wish I just, maybe if my achievement had taken a month longer, but I actually slowed down and enjoyed the journey. I mean, a lot of the time it's like, what's the freaking rush? Like we're all rushing to achieve these big goals. But I'm like, then what's next? Like if you gave yourself another year to achieve this goal, what else could you experience during that time? Like,
Right.
what could you be present for in your life? And so, yeah, like you still have a list, still get stuff done, but even just hearing it, I just feel like almost permission to be like, oh, I don't have to do it all at once.
Yeah. This is such an important point, Myth. When I think about my younger years when I was, finished my MBA and everything and was powering through my career, I was one of those people that had all of these milestones in my head. First, I would get this job, then I would get that, and I was chasing promotions and not having a lot of joy along the way. If I would think, what advice would I give career Sharon, who was starting her career in her late 20s and then the 30s, that would be the advice I would give to that version of myself. Slow down, girl. Enjoy what you're doing. And if you're not enjoying it, find something else to do. Because, over the course of a career that is 30 years, it's not linear. And I was always thinking linearity, like I do this, that, and the other thing. It's not linear. Every experience is going to bring you closer to where you need to be. You may not know you need to be there, but it's going to get you closer to that point. And I think we lose track of that. We are just rushing through our lives and not being really thoughtful about the experience of being. We just are doing all the time. And this doing is just so darn exhausting,
I love that. Slow down, because I think it's super important as well. You touched as well, like being in tune with your feelings. Like if something doesn't feel right, I always think that's an invitation. Like you don't always have to do something about it, but I think you at least owe it to yourself to be like, why doesn't this feel good? Is it just a temporary thing? Is it just something that I need to change? But you can't do that unless you slow down.
Right, right. And I think that's a really good introspective question to ask. Do I not feel good about it just in this moment? Or has this been a feeling that I've had for weeks or months? Because that should be the red flag, right?
And there
That
is
you need to sit down and start examining why you're feeling that way and what needs to be done about it.
And so for the women who are sitting here being like, yeah, something needs to change, like this has been my sign, what is the very first step you would recommend that they do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start making that progress towards a better work-life integration?
Yeah. I would say make a commitment to understanding how you're spending your time. That's the first step. The first step. And then after that, you can make some decisions about what needs to change. You need to spend some time being thoughtful and really examining what's going on in your life before you can change anything. Making change for the sake of making change usually is not sustainable. And so it like you said before, it pays to spend the time just to understand, not rush through it. I mean, if you've been, the last 10 years living the way that you're living, another week or 2 weeks of examining that is not going to make one bit of a difference one way or the other in terms of helping you reach your end goal. So take that time, invest in yourself, slow down, be honest, be really honest with yourself, and not only take an inventory of the things that you're doing, but also I would say put a check or an X about the things you're doing that you don't like to do, right? Because then this brings you closer to the next exercise of then deciding, what needs to go or be offloaded or outsourced or something like that, or just simply stopped. Sometimes it just needs to stop as well. And it's within everybody's power to manage that.
100%, I think. And you called this out earlier. We have a lot more control over our lives and how we spend our time than potentially we think about. I think for some women too, just the thought of analyzing how they spend their time can be quite confronting or scary. And I just want to call out that that's okay. And I know if you're listening to this podcast, you've done plenty of scary things before. It might really be scary just for a little bit. So you have the courage to conduct this analysis and get really brutally honest with yourself, because a whole next level of fulfillment and enjoyment. And I'm sure you can testify to this too. Oh, wait, when you have the courage to go, hang on, what's working for me and what's not working for me.
Absolutely. I think that's the mic drop, right?
Well, on that note, thank you so much, Sharon, for your time today. If the listeners are keen to learn more about the incredible work that you do and listen to your podcast as well, where can they find that?
You can find me at livingwhileleading.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn or Instagram. If you want to connect with me, I'm happy to connect with you and follow you online as well.
Thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to doing my own little mini audit too.
My pleasure. Thank you for pleasure of being on your show.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I hope this was helpful. If you thought of someone while listening to this podcast, I would be so grateful if you could share this episode with them. While you're doing that, please also take a moment to leave a review on the podcast if you haven't yet already. It takes less than a minute and it means so much to me and helps this podcast to reach more people just like you. Thank you so much for that, and I'll see you in the next episode. In the meantime, go out and achieve every dream you have, because actually, you can.